All right, well, I'm obviously in a different place today doing this video. That's okay. It's just what needs to take place for me to get this done and to get it up for everybody to see, to know what's coming up for this Sunday. So this Sunday, we of course are continuing our sermon series through the letter to the Romans, and of course we're talking about righteousness. We're looking at all that entails. You know, each chapter as Paul kind of builds on his argument. And I hope that as you read chapter 6 this week, which I want to encourage you to do, to read chapter 6, I hope you notice how Paul is kind of laying everything out now that he's been building for 5 chapters, this argument that he's been making about who God is and the way that God wants to work in the world. And now Paul is calling these Christians to, this is what that looks like for you. You used to live like this. You used to think like this. This is who you used to be. Who are you going to be going forward? What are you going to do? And Paul is very much going to be laying that out in chapter 6, 7, and 8 as he talks about essentially Christian living. What does it look like to be a Christian? And so chapter 6 is a really pivotal one. It's very important. And he uses the idea of slavery. And this is obviously a very difficult and touchy subject. It's one that, I think a lot of us want to do maybe an anachronistic reading, a look back on Paul and say, man, he should not have used slavery. That's the wrong kind of language to use. And maybe we can do that a little bit, but he's doing it for a reason. One, slavery was obviously very prevalent in Paul's time. And so he's taking an incredibly common way for people to be in the world, to live, and he's using that as an analogy. And that's not wrong to do. It maybe touches on some modern sensibilities and says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, be a part of that. But it's not wrong for Paul to do. But the second thing is he's obviously taking that and putting a positive spin on it and saying, you used to be slaves to sin, to the sinful life, to the way that you used to live. But now you need to be slaves to righteousness, to right living. And so that's kind of where we're going to focus this week. It really is an incredibly important thing to talk about. Even if we don't, like the language of slavery, who are we going to be? Are we going to be mastered by our old way of living and thinking, or are we going to be mastered by the way that God wants us to live, obedient and subject to what the Spirit wants, which of course is how he's going to go on to talk about it in chapter 8. And so all of this, is going to lead into the next couple of weeks as he builds on this argument. But one other really important thing, what role does baptism, play in this, gets talked about a lot, and I think misunderstood a lot. And so we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about that, and I'm excited to get into chapter 6 with you this week. All right. I'm going to sign off for now, and I will see you later. I hope that everybody reads chapter 6 and has a blessed rest of the week.